right. Hey, everybody. I believe I'm live coming to you from Facebook and YouTube. Just a second for people to show up here as we get going. Hope your day is awesome. Hope you're doing awesome things, having a great day so far. The West Coast is getting pounded by rain. So that's definitely a challenge for some of us out here on the West Coast. California, send my love. Lots of rain, all kinds of crazy thunderstorms, and just really some challenging situations there out in California. So I give all my thoughts and love and prayers to all my friends in California, my family's in California still. It's quite a thing. You know, I remember growing up in California, we didn't really experience that kind of weather. We didn't experience that kind of craziness, that kind of over the top weather at all. I think one time I remember, as a young person getting about 18 inches of snow. At least that's what it seemed like to me. It was probably more like 6 to 8 inches. And that's pretty rare. I grew up outside of Sacramento, and so that was kind of a rare thing. But anyways, what they're getting is really tough. It's going to be hard to recover. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of money. So I just want to send everybody our prayers and our love right now. Hopefully this is live. It's tough to say. I'm going to do a real quick shift from one channel to another so I can see if we are in fact live. And then we will jump into the content right away here. Boom, there we are, we're live. So the content today, we're going to talk about the housing market update. I'm going to give you kind of an update on what I'm seeing and talk through this article by Forbes magazine. It's a really interesting take that they have on the market and what they're seeing. And a lot of it ties back into interest rates. Then we're going to talk about the gap between buyers and sellers. That's the no deal aspect. It's really kind of an interesting thing that's taking place right now. And I've got some numbers to kind of show you where the gap exists, and what I've been seeing is what's going on in terms of the challenges there. Look, I got my notes. Classic. For those of you who don't know, I was a teacher for many years, so I do my lesson plans on a legal notepad. We'll talk about the gap between buyers and sellers, and then the gap between the market demand and the market inventory. So market inventory is up a little bit, which is interesting. Days on the market is way up, but there's a gap between what we are seeing on the market in terms of the inventory and what people are looking for. I've got some examples of that I've encountered recently, and then some tricks on how to overcome that. A little bit about what sellers are thinking, a little bit about what buyers are thinking right now, the people that I'm working with, and then if there's time, I'll cover some of the frequently asked questions that I get almost on the daily basis. So housing market update. So let me take you through this little bad boy right here. I am a big fan of, I'm a big fan of Forbes magazine and Fortune magazine. Those are my two go-to. Fortune magazine had an interesting article out just today with the title, "A 1981 level mortgage rate shock has the housing market in a correction. These 7 leading research firms predict what's next for rates." It's tough to say. So rate prediction is not a pure science. It is as much an art as it is a science. It's something that if somebody says, "Oh, I can tell you exactly where the interest rates are going to be in 6 months from now," they're not being honest unless they've got the magical crystal ball that none of us have. So you have to make sure that you're taking that into account as you're planning, or you're using this information for whatever that is that you're trying to do with your own personal decisions. So let's go through this a little bit. It's kind of interesting. Federal Reserve's eventually quelled the inflationary run that took off in the 70s, but only after the central bank's aggressive rate hikes saw mortgage rates top 18% in 1981. Now, I don't really personally remember that because I was 2 years old, but I do have family members that I've talked about this, and other people that I've talked about it that are friends or neighbors or other folks that remember that experience. And that's what sent the housing market into a sharp recession. And at the time, in 1981, home builders mailed lumber to the Fed as a means of protest, while some renters assumed they'd never be able to afford a home. Of course, we know that down the road, several of them did. Fast forward to today, and the Fed's ongoing inflation fight has once again spurred a mortgage rate shock. This spike in mortgage rates, which are up from 3.22% to 6.48%, so that's more than double over the past 12 months, has pushed the U.S. housing market into a full-blown housing correction. That's true. Definitely seeing that. Doesn't mean that, homes aren't selling and people aren't buying and selling. That's not what that means. But it definitely, we've experienced a correction. And I personally think it's a good thing. It was a little bit crazy out there. Actually, it was a lot bit crazy out there. On one hand, 6% mortgage rates are hardly historically abnormal. On the other hand, that 3.22 percentage point jump in mortgage rates over the past year has delivered an affordability shock that's similar to the one dealt in 1981 when mortgage rates climbed 4.9 percentage points to 18%. So what they're saying there is essentially 3.22% was quasi-affordable, although there were crazy things happening. People were waiving inspections. People were paying tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars over list price. There was a lot that was going on in the market that created, some unaffordability. So although they say there that it was a quote affordable, I don't know. A lot of people had a tough time. It was really hard for buyers to get in that market too. There were several instances where I had great buyers who were well qualified for a home, and we lost out because they didn't want to do silly things like waive inspections or pay $50,000 over the list price, or do escalation clauses or this kind of stuff. So even at 3.22%, it was. I don't know if you can really call that affordable, but it's less affordable now in some ways. We'll get to that. So it's less about the numerical mortgage rate and more about the total monthly mortgage payment as a percentage of the borrower's income. That is huge. And when accounting for everything, home prices, income, mortgage rates, the 2022 affordability squeeze, they've called it, is nearly on par with the 1981 affordability squeeze. Affordability has evaporated, and with it, housing demand. Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody Analytics, tells Fortune. This isn't happening by mistake, of course. Back in June, Jerome Powell said that the market needed to go through a reset in order to cool housing inflation and put the housing market and economy at large into better balance. Yeah, he's warned us about pain. He said, you're going to have pain. There will be pain. You will experience pain. You're going to be in pain. It seems like every time we hear the Fed talk, they use the word pain still. That's why the Fed, back to the article, that's why the Fed, which halted its buying in mortgage-backed securities and jacked up the Fed's fund rate, put immense upward pressure on mortgage rates in 2022. At the end of the day, if housing affordability gets too pressurized, something we're seeing right now, investors and first-time home buyers alike will stop bidding up prices, aka that's slowing the prices, keeping them from going down, and home builders will pull back, giving supply chain some breathing room. Now that's a tricky piece, and in Oregon, that's an interesting fact. Hey, Brad is here. Yeah, the last 2 years, indeed, Brad, have been insane, and something needed to change because we are actually, the Fed funds rate was near zero for a long time. What if I can pull up that chart somewhere? I don't know where that is, but it was near zero for too long. So back to the article. For the longer term, what we need is supply and demand to get better aligned so that housing prices go up at a reasonable level and at a reasonable pace so that people can afford houses again. We probably in the housing market have to go through a housing correction to get back to that place. That's what Powell said in September. When he said that, I'll tell you, I'll be honest, things really got quiet. Actually, it was more like August when things just, everybody kind of paused when they did that first 75 basis points hike. My buyers started to pause. My sellers were like, what's going on? Listings that I already had on the market started to get a little nervous. I don't blame them. And so that's what we saw when those hikes started to happen. And that's where the pain from Powell's pain started to kick in. This difficult housing correction should put the housing market back into better balance. That's the hope. Well, this chart shows the mortgage rates, and here it is at the peak when in 81, it gets way up in terms of the year over year percentage. So this means that in 1 year, interest rates went up by almost 6%. But what you'll notice is a couple of years later, so this is 1980. This is on my first birthday, basically, March 28th, 1980. And then you'll see 3 years later, basically, it bottomed out in 1983. So that's an interesting relationship that you're going to see. They did fall quickly, right? They dropped them in 81, and then they shot back up. That was when they let the foot off the gas too early, so to speak. So that's what Jerome Powell and all the Fed, when you listen to the St. Louis Fed or the people from the Minneapolis Fed, or you listen to the different people on the Fed board, that's what they talk about. Is they talk about that happening right there. They're afraid that if they let up too soon and interest rates come down, inflation's going to flare back up, and then they're going to have to do a more drastic move. Then we see things kind of normalize. This is within 1%, within 2%. We had a little spike there in the 90s, but then boom, 3.85% were up, that's significant. That's a big component when you're talking about $500,000. So as long as housing affordability remains pressurized like this, Zandy believes home sales will remain weak and national home prices will continue to fall. We are seeing that, definitely seeing that. Areas are falling at different rates. I happen to be in Oregon, Southern Oregon. Our prices are definitely down, but we haven't had like the crash that maybe we've seen in other areas like Boise, Idaho, or Austin, Texas. Or it is a little regionalized because remember, we're talking about different markets. The market in Oregon is not the same as it is in New York. Florida is not the same as Montana. You need a specialist, somebody who studies that area and knows it really well to help you when you get to, tackling some of these questions. Heading forward, Zandy says there are 3 levers that can depressurize housing affordability. Rising incomes, which we just saw this month that wage increases cooled off, much to the enjoyment of the stock market, which I thought was kind of interesting. Falling home prices and falling mortgage rates. So we've seen recently in the last month, mortgage rates have come down by about a point since the beginning of December, and home prices have also come down, which is an interesting phenomenon. However, home prices are not falling to a level that kind of make up for the rise in interest rates. So what they did was they rose the interest rates so fast that there's a large gap there still. And we'll talk about that. But that gap is important. And it's not killing deals, but it's keeping deals from being done. So that's why the thumbnail for this video is no deal. It's a large gap because of the rates and the home prices. Of those 3 levers, agents and builders alike are closely watching to see if mortgage rates will fall. Of course we are. First, it's the lever that can move up and down with the most ease. True, and it moves the fastest. Second, financial markets, which increasingly believe the Fed is on a path to taming inflation, have in recent weeks put some downward pressure on mortgage rates. That's what they're talking about there. 6.48. We'll talk about this in just a second, but mortgage rates are actually more at 6.14%. Now, I'm not quoting you rates. I'm not a rate specialist. I'm not a lender. I'm just a guy who studies the housing market. I live in Southern Oregon. I'm just trying to give you information and a vantage point from what I see, from where I sit. Second, financial markets, blah, blah, blah. We talked about that. If financial conditions continue to loosen, mortgage rates will continue to fall. To get a better gauge of, there's where they talk about, mortgage rate forecast from the 7 firms. So, Mortgage Bankers Association, DC-based trade group projects 30-year fixed mortgage rate will average 5.2% in 2023. Fannie Mae, who backs a lot of our loans and mortgages, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac do a huge percentage of it. Fannie Mae says 6.3% will be the average. And Freddie Mac says average is 6.4%. Goldman Sachs says 6.2%. And Moody's Analytics says 6.5% through the 2023 spring housing market. Interesting. Morgan Stanley says 6%. Realtor.com is the highest, and they say that mortgage rates will average 7.4% in 2023. So what does that mean? Well, my friend at Synergy One Lending, Alex Gardner, put together this table, and he gave a talk and talked us through quite a bit about these numbers, talked me through these numbers quite a bit, which are really interesting. Really, if you want to really know where the numbers are, the only way to do it is to contact your local lender, talk to them about your scenario. And in fact, I would argue that you do need a relationship with a lender if you plan on buying and selling homes anytime in your life. And it's a valuable relationship, just like it will be with your real estate agent or your broker. It's really helpful to have someone that you know, that you trust, that's working this, that's got their eyes on it. It's a full-time job to track all this stuff. You've got things that you're doing out there. It's hard to keep up on these changes. We all understand that. So Alex talked me through these numbers and gave me the following charts. Really interesting. So this is a conventional loan. So that's, a standard loan with a large down payment, 20% down. That's significant. Let me see if I can spread this out. Oh, maybe a little bit wider. 20% down is significant. That's a decent chunk of change, right? It's $100,000 on a $500,000 purchase price. So if that means the home's $500,000, you're putting down $100,000. Maybe mom gave you $100,000. I don't know where you got $100,000. I don't care. The lender cares. You can't just $100,000 can't just show up in your bank account. You have to account for it. But a $400,000 loan at 7.5% interest rate is $2,796 a month. That's principal and interest only. Take into account insurance and taxes, easily another, what is that? $204. So let's round it up. Actually, yeah, so another $204. So we're going to essentially round this up to $3,000 a month. Well, what a lot of people say, Dave Ramsey says 20%. But a lot of people say a third, 33% of your income only should go towards your housing costs. Well, if you're paying $3,000 on your mortgage, that means you got to make $9,000, which some of you do, and some of you make way more than that, but not a lot of you do. I was a teacher for a long time. I didn't gross $9,000 very many months. I did maybe at times when I was freelancing and I was writing and arranging music, but teachers, nurses, firefighters, public safety officers, that's not common for them to make $9,000 a month until they're in the upper ranks or administration. Okay, so let's look at this. When the rates were 3%, that same loan, look at that, would have been $1,000 a month cheaper. $1,000, basically a third of it, right? So rates and the impact it has on your mortgage payment is huge. So we started the year basically here, $1,796 a month. And then we got up to $2,661 a month. And now, let's see, where are rates today? Again, I'm not quoting you rates. I'm just using this as a reference. I love this website, Mortgage News Daily. They have the 30-year fix at 6.14. They've got FHA. Look at that. 5.82, down under 6%. They've got a 30-year VA, 5.85, not bad. Jumbo's a little bit lower. Jumbo's a little up right now. But anyways, going back to these numbers. So what that means is your monthly payment and your monthly income requirements have changed a lot. So in order to qualify for that loan, before it would have been where's my calculator? Where's my handy dandy calculator? Oh, it's not on my desk. It's on my phone. Before it would have been, what's 1,700 times 3? Would have been you only had to make $5,100 a month only. I don't mean to offend anybody, but that's what it would have been, $5,100 a month. Now that the rates are about 6%, I'm just going to round it up. 2,400 times 3 is 7,200. That's a big difference. So what does that mean? Well, that means people have had to do things like rate buy downs where sellers pay for lower interest rate, or it means that sales prices have had to come down. So here's what's happened a little bit. That home that was at $500,000, here's that rate. So I use the color red to pivot. So we're using this 7.5% example, basically to kind of look at Realtor.com's worst case scenario, if you will. So the sales price of $500,000 means your P&I, they call it principal and interest only, is $2,796 a month. Well, sellers started to realize, buyers can't qualify for this amount of money. So what are we going to do? So homes kind of sat on the market. Sellers had a couple things going on. Sellers were looking at it and saying, well, hey, Johnny got $50,000 over asking price last month right down the street. Why can't I get that price? Well, I understand. I really do. I get that. But the trick is Johnny also had market conditions that are much different than they are right now. So sellers have been a little stuck, and I don't blame them because they were, at the beginning of 2022, you were getting your house ready for the market. You were anticipating entering a certain market, and it took you 6 months, and you put new gravel in, and you painted, and you made sure that your home was in good condition. My clients did the same thing. And then you hit the market, and then Jerome Powell gives his paying speeches, and boom, everything changed. So your $500,000 sales price, where you were thinking you were going to come in, all of a sudden, the number of buyers who could qualify for that loan was way smaller, right? So, you have to think, first off, not everyone who qualifies at a certain income point wants to live in Ashland, Oregon, or Grants Pass, Oregon, or Medford, Oregon. They don't necessarily want to live there. So you have to take the people who desire to live in that market, whatever it is, Phoenix, Boise. I don't think you could pay me enough to live in South Texas or, someplace where it's wicked hot all the time like that. So you take that pool of people, and then the interest rates shrink that pool of people dramatically. But you'll notice, in order to get back to kind of where we were at 3.5%, where the monthly payment is $1,796, in order to get anywhere close there, it means means that the sellers have to drop their price to $320,000. That's right. Do you see this? So when rates came up and people were, things were moving at 3.5%, and $1,700 a month seems to be, or, was kind of a manageable payment for people. Alyssa and I were able to buy our home. Ours was a little bit more than that, but it certainly wasn't $3,000 a month, So this payment or this price point, in order to get there, sellers would have to drop their home to $320,000. And guess what? Sellers just ain't going to do that. That's a huge price drop. That's almost 40% price drop. There's no way they can do that. In fact, in many cases, they may not be able to do that just because they'll be underwater with their loan. And that's obviously problematic. You have to sell your home at such a price that you can pay off your loan, right? So getting that price drop and negotiating the interest rates has really changed things big time. And that's kind of a real world exercise in terms of how it's done it. Is it changed the price point dramatically? It changed the landscape from this being a decent payment to now this is your, this would be your sales price point. And sellers, and I don't blame them. Sellers aren't, ready and or willing to make the shift. Now, what can you do to overcome those things? Well, there are a couple things you can do. You can do something called a rate buy down. And we're actually going to have a lender on next week to talk with us a little bit about what a buy down is and how that works for buyers and also how it works for sellers. But trust me, it's a savvy move that lenders and other bankers have figured out to lower the price point, and to contribute. Well, they don't lower the price point. They lower the amount of money that the seller would net. So the seller gives up a little bit of money, but it contributes that money to the buyer, which really helps keep the monthly payment down. Because remember, we're talking about debt to income and we're talking about monthly payments right now. That's what's huge in the mortgage industry. So some additional things of interest while we're looking at that real quick and talking about mortgage rates, as you can see where they started to climb. So this chart shows from 2014. So, we were in the, fours, upper fives around 2018. And then just look at how crazy low they got. And think about all the people that that bought or sold or refinanced right here. So if you're in a place where you have a home like, I'll use Alyssa and I as an example. When we bought, we were at, we got an interest rate of 2.25%. Incredible. So we happened to buy at one of the lowest periods in history. If we were to sell our home, even though, our equity has gone up by maybe $200,000, maybe we've made $200,000 in equity. If we were to sell our home and we were to buy something of equal or greater value, right? We call that step up. If we were to do that, it would be, we would afford less home and our payment would go up. So if you bought in this time frame, if you're, one of those people who got in right around here when it was 2.5%, it's really tricky for you to do that. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't switch markets. And that's what I think savvy consumers and people who can work remotely are doing, is they're switching markets and they're taking advantage of this. And they're saying, oh, I see. So I can sell now at this certain spot because I live in a desirable location, and I'll go somewhere else that's also desirable, but maybe I'll be able to get more bang for my buck, if you will. And so that's a clever move too. But all that is to say, it's made a huge gap between the buyers and sellers of real dollars. So that's a big component. That's really something that I don't think people talk about enough. Additionally, we've had a large gap in terms of the market demand and market supply. Yeah, you might look and go online, and I'm going to open a new tab here. You might go online and experience the euphoria of, wow, there's actually some homes that I can buy in this market. There's some homes on the market. Homes have been on the market for a little while. Yes. Your initial discovery might be really exciting, but then one of the things you might experience is lack of inventory for specifically what you're looking for. So this is, I'm going to share a little bit from the MLS here. So this is kind of the realtor side. This is the area that I serve, Oregon, including Bend and Sun River. And this is our MLS, which is great. It has good diversity, good range of examples. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about kind of a recent trend, recent thing that I've been looking for. And that is a home price between $400,000 and let's say $600,000, 2-bedroom minimum. And they're moving to Oregon. So they're thinking, I'd like a little bit of room, and I'd like a view, at least a half acre, no more than 2 acres, because 2 acres is a lot of work. And then you're saying, well, I want to be near Ashland. I definitely want to be in this specific area. So I'm just going to say Jackson County. I can be a little bit outside Ashland, that's fine. And when you really start to look at it, the nuts and bolts, there are only 22 options. There are only 22 results that come from that, as opposed to even a year ago, we had more of this type of home available. Because remember, people are locked in at those low rates, so they're holding on to those homes. Or baby boomers. I've also met with some clients. I met with a widow, just the most sweet, amazing older lady. Her husband passed away after 45 years of being married. He had a heart attack, and healthy guy, and just out walking the dog, had a heart attack and passed away. And she's, they've lived on this property. It's paid for. She's been there since the late 70s. And she's looking at, okay, well, if I sell, well, where do I go? And the reality situation is, due to the income situation, it's going to be really tough for her to sell and to go anywhere. So now she's holding on to this piece of property that she doesn't necessarily want, but because she can't go anywhere else, right? So it's got this, not to use a Reagan term, but it's got this trickle down effect, or trickle sideways effect is really kind of what it is. And it's impacting people who are on a fixed income in a serious way. Okay, so here are your options. Here's what you got. You're looking for this. Look at the price point. You want a half an acre and you want something that's in good shape. And, these are your choices. There's this one in the fours that needs some work, and it's not a bad place, but, it needs some work. And there's this one. And then there's this one over here on Rogue River. There's some decent options. Let's look at the pictures of some of these bad boys. It's a nice house, but there's a lot of work there, and it's, frankly, pretty dated on the inside, and it's going to take some work. Well, that home is listed at, where is that one listed at? That one's listed at $435,000. Okay, real quick, let's check our cheat sheet. $435,000 at 7.5% means $2,461. Multiply that by 3. What is that? $7,500 a month or something that somebody's going to have as gross income? Maybe not. And then you're going to have to look at, how far remote are you? All these things are major factors. Here's one. Pioneer Road, nice part of Medford, nice deck, lots of space. That deck's going to need some maintenance, so you better be thinking about that. If you're moving to Oregon and you're going to have a deck outside, well, that's a nice kitchen, isn't it? Nice range hood. It's like a warmer oven on top, or a broiler oven. That's nice. Nice little island. Nice hardwood floors. Nothing too wild. Oh, nice wainscoting in the bathroom. $595,000. $595,000. So you'd have to put more than 20% down in order to qualify. But it's a nice home, right? Well, these people are looking at this, and they've understandably decided, hey, that's the value that our home is. That's where we're going to be at. That's where we're going to come in. And it's creating a gap between who's looking, where the demand is, what the demand can qualify for, and what the inventory is. So even somebody that has that money, they're looking at that home and they're saying, well, if I'm going to spend $600,000, I'm going to want the kitchen updated. I'm going to want this updated. I'm going to want it to be in this condition. I want to make sure the roof's in good shape. I don't want to have to worry about the gutters. I would like some nice landscaping. Oh yeah, by the way, I'd like a great location, right? Like, all these things are factors to that price point. And furthermore, when you only have 3 or 4 options at that price point, it takes us to what our next bullet point is, and that is what buyers are thinking. Buyers are thinking, well, maybe I need to wait. Maybe more homes like this will come on the market, or maybe interest rates will come down. They're looking at this and they're saying, well, Interest rates are starting to trend down. Yes, they've gone back up a little bit the last month or so, but generally speaking, on the bigger side of things, rates are coming down a little bit. So maybe I'll, wait. So buyers are thinking, well, maybe I'll wait. And sellers are thinking, well, mortgage rates are high. And well, because mortgage rates are high, I might not be able to get $600,000 for this or 594. So I'm going to need to wait as well. So what do you got? Both buyers and sellers are waiting. And so when it first happened, people waited kind of as long as they could. It was 3 months or so. Man, I tell you, my phone went quiet. It got a little nerve wracking. And then finally people were like, well, you know what? I got to move. I got this job in Oregon. I've got to come up from here, or I need to go to this job and somewhere else. So I need to sell. It's time to do it. So things didn't come to a complete standstill, but they definitely shifted. And one of the shifts that we're seeing is, I love this is just a little data point that's on our MLS every day. I'm going to see if I can make this bigger. I don't know if I can. I think I can. Can I? There you go. So we get this little hot sheet in the last 24 hours. It shows here's what's new. So new listings, there were 31 active contingencies, meaning in our market contingencies where they have a home that they're, somebody has got an accepted offer, but it's contingent on something. Maybe somebody has to sell the home, or something has to give. Yeah. So that's a big component. My mouse just died on me. Silly Bluetooth mouse. If anybody out there has a good recommendation for a Bluetooth mouse, please hit me up. Active contingencies, no active short sales. We'll talk about that on an upcoming broadcast too. Forecasts of foreclosures and all these things. We're not seeing a lot of it, my friends. But here's what we are seeing. Look at that number of price changes. 42. So there were 42 homes or listings, property listings, that reduced their price in the last 24 hours. There were only 31 that are new listings. So we are seeing, sometimes this is almost twice as many price changes as new listings. And in 2020, 2021, even the early part of 2022, we would see zero. We had zero price changes. There was also very rarely a coming soon listing, because the moment it was ready, somebody would put it on the market and boom, my phone would blow up and people's phones would blow up and we'd all have to run to get buyers under contract. It was an interesting time. That is not happening anymore because of the interest rates and how that's impacted demand. Also, people with cash are holding on to their cash a little bit more because, with uncertainty in the economy, people are thinking, hey, liquidity and cash is king, right? Unless you're Elon Musk, you can't just go out and spend all this money on Twitter or anything. You have to hold on to your funds. That's important. So looking at all of those factors together, buyers and sellers are waiting if they can. Now, at some point, something's got to give. And this Fortune article says it's likely going to be interest rates. They could be right. I don't know. They could be wrong. But home prices are unlikely to be the aspect that gives away, or that gives way the most, at least to the point where it makes up for that gap. Right now, maybe rates come down. It's kind of weird. There's an inverse relationship, right? Rates come down and prices. And so that's what Jerome Powell's hoping for, is that we get to that balance point, but we are not there yet. Okay. So I've got some time. I want to hit some of the FAQs and some of the questions. Oh, a couple direct messages. So what is the current market like for buying and selling a home? Well, the short answer is it's a bit of a stalemate. It's just a bit of waiting, and maybe you'll find occasionally the buyers found this ideal piece of property, and they've identified that, and they're going to come and get it. That's happened recently. Or somebody's sold, maybe they sold in 2022 and they've been holding on to cash, and they're reaching that tipping point where they're like, well, we need to move now, or we need to sign another lease. And so there's some of that too, timing in the market. So those are some current things we're seeing in the market. How much is my home worth? That's a question I get asked all the time. And the answer is as much as someone is willing to pay for it. So what does that mean? Well, we can look at comps. The way that we price homes is by finding comparable sales. It's a little bit tricky. It was really tricky a couple of months ago when everything slowed down and we were looking at these comparable sales. And this is part of what takes so long, right? Is there's a lag between what sold and that price point and what you might be able to sell your home for now, because the interest rates changed. So there's a lag there, as economists explain it. So how much is your home worth? Whatever someone is willing to pay for it, and that a major factor in that is demand, right? But also location, and then what you're doing with your home, which leads me to the next question that I get asked a lot, which is, how can I get the best price for my home? Well, you got to do some work. So the way that I like to approach it is by getting to know you. So say, for instance, you reach out, you say, hey, I've got a home to sell. I'll say, great. Tell me a little bit about it, and we'll talk, and we'll get to know one another. And then we'll set an appointment. Before that appointment, I'll send you a questionnaire with some things that can be addressed not in person or not at the house. Like, it's great to know why you bought the house. Like, what are your favorite parts about the home? That's a great thing to know. It's also really good to know so that I can understand what your concerns and your fears are, how to help, how to get through that, so that, just like with my kids, if I know they're afraid of something, I'm gonna help coach them. Or just like Alyssa, my spouse, does. She knows I'm struggling with something. She's going to coach me. She's going to be real calm, and she's going to work on strategies to try and help me through that. Same thing here. So it's really helpful to know why you like the house, what some of your concerns are, and then also get like some, basic numbers out of the way, square footage, this kind of thing. And then we'll get together, have a conversation. I like to start at the kitchen table and just have a conversation. And then we'll walk around the house, and I'll just be as honest as I can about what I see. And sometimes it's going to be, wow, you're ready to go. Let's go. Or sometimes it's going to be, oh man, it's not a good time because this X, Y, and Z is happening. Or, hey, look at this fascia board. There's some dry rot here. You need to, you should replace that and paint. Or maybe part of the pool decking needs to be scraped off, and you need to resurface, the pool deck, or there's something in that regard that needs to be taken care of. We'll talk about that in the appointment. And that might mean it's going to take you 6 months to get ready. Another thing I always advise sellers to do is to get a home inspection early. So hire a home inspector. It's a couple $100. They'll come, they'll do a 10,000 foot overview of your home. They'll check all the systems. They'll make sure things are working. They've got checklists, and they'll tell you what's good and what's bad, what needs attention. And then from there, you can make a repair list, because one of the biggest challenges, or one of the, toughest parts of selling a home, is when you get to that point, you put it on the market, you got the pictures taken, you're leaving the house for showings, you're, loading up the dogs or whatever you have to do. You're getting out of the way, and then you finally get an offer. You like the offer, you accept the offer, and then the inspection happens. And that is not a point where you want to be blindsided. So I always advise that people get a home inspection before we list, so that you know kind of what's going on, so that you know what to expect, because that's huge. Trust me, you don't want to find that out down the road. You want to be the one to learn that, and you don't want it to be a point of discovery, because buyers frankly, especially as the market is shifting, buyers will get freaked out a little bit. So you have to be aware of that. So that's how you get the best price for your home. Marketing matters. The way that you market, I love using video. Obviously, I'm a video fan, but the way that you market is important. What are some common pitfalls to avoid when buying and selling a home? Well, when selling a home, a common pitfall to avoid is not doing your own home inspection before you list. Just that's an easy one. And as a buyer, you want to make sure that you do an inspection too. Make sure you do your due diligence and be thorough. And don't be worried about, offending the seller or, anything like that. You want to know what you're getting into. It doesn't mean that, you might be so enamored with a house that they might tell you that the foundation is failing and all the plumbing is leaking and the electrical wiring is about to start a fire, but you still might love the house. But I highly encourage you to do full due diligence at every turn. Can you help me find a home in a specific location with specific features? The answer is yes. We've got great search capabilities. One of the things that is different between the MLS and Zillow are that I can set up, very specific parameters, but I can also look at homes in the past that may have met that criteria. And maybe there's other homes in that neighborhood, or, there's some kind of component that relates to that home. So yeah, it's really, I'm able to help with specific locations, specific features, even beyond what you might think is available on realtor.com or Zillow. How can I make my home more appealing to buyers? Well, number one, you start with the entryway. You get the entryway dialed in, because no matter how many times I've done it, you go up and you put that code in and you wait for the key, and I'm fumbling around. I can't get the door unlocked. We're standing. Many times we spend more time in one singular space. We spend more time right in front of the house than we do anywhere else in the home. So make sure that the entryway is dialed in. Take a moment, paint the front door, make sure that the entryway is clear, make it really welcoming, and make it inviting. If it's dirty and there's like a ring camera out there and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm being watched, that's not very inviting. And it sets the wrong tone before you even literally cross the threshold. So that's a huge one to make your home more appealing to buyers. And then focus on the kitchen next. We enter the home 9 times out of 10. We walk right through the living room. Doesn't matter what the floor plan is, and we're all going to the kitchen. So you're going to want to make sure that the kitchen is in good shape. You're going to want to make sure that the kitchen appliances are clean. You're going to want to make sure that it's tidy. You don't want a lot of clutter. So take care of that. And then next are the primary, we used to call it the master. Some people still call it the master, whatever. Primary master bedroom. The big bedroom needs to be dialed in. You want that bathroom to be clean. You want it to look good. Those are big selling points, right? Yes, it's important for Gabe and Winston and Steven to have nice bedrooms, but Alyssa and I are the ones paying the bills, so we're going to want our bedroom to be dialed in. Those are some things. There's a lot more we can talk about, and I'm happy to have that frank conversation with you. How much does it cost to use a real estate agent is a question I get asked a lot. The answer is it varies. So we don't set prices. We don't have a set price, and this is the price, and everyone in this area does this price. That's called price fixing. That's no bueno. What it depends upon are a number of factors, right? So that's a very one-on-one unique conversation between the seller and the listing agent. The buyer doesn't technically pay any of the commissions. In this country, it's the sellers that pay the commissions as part of the closing costs, right? Because the buyers have large closing costs up front. It helps offset those costs, and it just kind of helps manage the whole deal. And that's how it runs in the United States. Can I provide references from past clients? Sure, I'm happy to. You can always call me past clients. They'll tell you that I'm just as nerdy in person as I am on video. And that's that's the truth. That's the reality. And you get to know somebody really well through this process. And at times it can be really tedious. It can be stressful. It can take a long time, but it's worth it. And to help people achieve their goals is really um, pretty cool. It's one of those things where when we set out to start working together, we'll maybe barely know one another. Although I can tell all y'all that are finding me via YouTube, I love it when you reference some of my, hairstyle changes or whatever. Like you'll notice the new studio setup, right? So these things are all huge, but at the end of the day, it's really more important that I know you, so that I can help serve you, so that we can go along this journey together, and then I can help connect you. Right? I've also many times met people off YouTube who aren't looking to buy or sell in Oregon; they're looking in Montana or they're looking in Wisconsin, and I happen to, be part of a brokerage and part of a team, and have great people all over the country. And I'm also happy to look at people outside my brokerage or outside of my team, because I want somebody who's going to do a great job for you. So I interview people. I've been known to call agents and say, hey, I have a referral. We need to get on the phone. We need to talk. And I want to hear about your values. And I want to hear about what your, customer service is like. And, it's pretty quick and easy to tell someone's motivations, especially when you're in my shoes looking across the aisle. Just like when I was a teacher, right? It was easy to tell the teachers that were loving what they were doing. And then it was easy to tell the teachers that were just punching the clock and getting out as soon as the bell rang, right? Well, it's the same thing in this business. And I know that you all can tell the difference too. But what would be great is if you knew that up ahead of time, and you knew that before you got yourself into a real estate transaction, because you're going to want someone who's going to be there with you fighting, for you all the way through, and just doing a good job, just working hard. And that's important. That's also one of the things that in the housing market is a major factor. And it's a good part of the process, right? It creates a little bit of tension, creates a little bit of a grind, but that's a really important thing. So let's see. Any other questions from the chat? Any comments? Awesome. Well, my first live broadcast, everybody. I'm not going to lie. I was a little nervous. I probably talked faster than I should have. I'm sure that I made all kinds of mistakes. I'm going to give myself a little bit of time before I listen to this, before I go back in and check out this video. But I hope that you're, enjoy it. Next week, we'll have a lender friend on who is going to help with processing and understanding the buy downs. That's something that I really think is helpful for buyers and sellers to know right now. And that's something that's out of my wheelhouse. I'm going to bring on an expert. Andrea Zendel from Guild Mortgage in Ashland is going to be on next week. And we'll get the chance to kind of talk through that. Let's hope that the gap starts to get a little bit smaller, so that, people can get deals done that are either looking to buy a house or looking to sell a house. And if you need help in any area of real estate, or if there's anything I can do to help, maybe you need some trumpet advice, feel free to call me or send me an email. I'm always available, and you can text me or however you need to. But I'm always here, and I'm always happy to help. Hope you have a great day.